We're back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Wednesday, March 20th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So I didn't say the other link this time. I made sure to not do that today. So with that, let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we're going to talk about the Jets and their offseason moves. I know I touched upon them last week, but yesterday they did sign free agent wide receiver Mike Williams to a one-year deal to add to that receiving core to pair with Garrett Wilson. So I'll talk about that, the impact of that, and kind of just, again, look back at all the signings that they made this offseason. Then in the second part of the show, I'll look at the power rankings that were released this week from NFL.com, post-free agency. Again, moves are still going to be made, but again, not as, major as, what happened last week. The craziness for the most part has ended. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about a few wide receivers in the third segment. We'll talk about Jerry Jeudy getting a new contract with the Browns. We'll talk about Stephon Diggs and Odell Beckham Jr. as well. So that'll be the third part of the show. And then the final part of the show, we'll talk about the Bucs and what they plan on doing with some players. They franchise tagged Antoine Winfield Jr., but they also want to, obviously extend him. They also want to extend Tristan Wirfs, their left tackle. So I'll get into that as well. So with that being said, let's get into the first topic, which is breaking down the Jets offseason moves. So yesterday they signed Mike Williams to a one-year contract worth up to $15 million. Big wide receiver, and of course, did miss a lot of time last season due to a torn ACL, but he did get off to a decent start, but just unfortunately ended up getting hurt and missed pretty much the entire 2023 season. But the Jets bring him in despite all that. A big wide receiver, and again, this was something that the Jets needed to do. Whether it was signing him or addressing it elsewhere, the Jets needed to, bolster this receiving core as well. To pair along with Garrett Wilson, which is big, Williams leads the NFL with 15.8 yards per reception among players with at least 200 catches since 2018. Again, he tore his ACL in Week 3 of 2023. So there is some risk there, but again, if he could be healthy, if he stays healthy, I think he could definitely produce with the Jets, and especially if we got a healthy Aaron Rodgers. So one of the things that my friend said yesterday, who was a Jet fan, he was basically calling out the people that were, begging for the Jets to sign Mike Williams, and it was because of his 2021 season. He set career highs in receptions with 76 and receiving yards with 1,146 while scoring 9 touchdowns. So that's one of the main reasons why fans wanted the Jets to go out and get this guy. And again, I think if he could stay healthy and you have a healthy quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, I think that could definitely be a good signing. And on top of that, it's a one-year deal. So again, like I said with Marquise Brown, this week, if it doesn't pan out, then it's one and done. So it's not like you agreed to a long-term deal with him. And, again, this also comes off of the fact that the Jets, they signed Allen Lazard to that massive contract, and he was a big disappointment last year. So, again, all the more reason to try to go out and get another receiver. But let's kind of look at some of the other moves that the Jets have made. So, the big thing this offseason has been the offensive line. So, you go out and you sign Tyron Smith. And, again, one of the best left tackles in the NFL, but is getting older and has an injury history. He's missed 37 games over the past 4 seasons. They also brought in Javon Kinlaw, played on the defensive line for the 49ers. Obviously has a background with Robert Saleh, so they brought him in. The risk with him, injury history, but he was a former first-round pick, and he was, the player the 49ers drafted to replace DeForest Buckner. So they brought him in. They brought in Tyrod Taylor, of course, a legit backup quarterback, to be behind Aaron Rodgers. Knock on wood that he doesn't get hurt. But yeah, just in case something does happen, Tyrod could step in, and produce. He did okay with the Giants last year as their backup quarterback, but also he has an injury concern as well. So yeah, they re-signed their punter and their kicker, Thomas Morstead and Greg Zuerlein. At least for Jet fans, you could say that you had good special teams last season. But yeah, so they also signed John Simpson, guard. The risk with him is pass protection issues, and also he was flagged for 11 penalties last season. And then also, they did trade for Morgan Moses, which, to another tackle. So, again, the Jets, they addressed the offensive line. So hopefully the offensive line is better. You hope Vera Tucker bounces back and recovers well from the Achilles, I believe, right, that he suffered last season. And then you got Tippmann as the center. So, listen, the Jets went out and they addressed the offensive line, and on top of that, they also, brought in a wide receiver as well. They brought in Chuck Clark. I guess he was the replacement for Whitehead, who left in free agency. But what the Jets have done, though, is now with their pick, they could really go many different ways. They could go and draft an offensive lineman. They could go and draft a receiver. Maybe they go out and they draft a receiver. We'll see who ends up being available. I know that Brock Bowers has gained a lot of traction with rumors. Maybe there's a chance that he ends up getting drafted by the Jets. There's many different things that they could do. Or could they add to the defense? I think the offense is more of a priority in this draft, just because you want to surround Aaron Rodgers with as much talent as possible, and with as much protection as possible. I think the Jets will probably draft a lineman at some point in the draft, but they could really do a lot of different things with this late round. Well, not this late round pick, but this first round pick. So I'm curious to see what they end up doing, but I think they did a good job. They addressed the offensive line. You added another receiver. So, now again, the biggest thing with them is it's going to be health. That's really what it's going to come down to, because, my other friend did make a joke saying that, Rodgers, Mike Williams, and Tyron Smith are going to play a combined 12 snaps. And you don't want to see that. Again, if everything pans out, the Jets could definitely be a good team next year. But you got a lot of guys coming off of injuries. You got Aaron Rodgers coming off of an Achilles. You got Mike Williams coming off of a torn ACL. You got to protect Rodgers. I think if he's healthy, I think he's going to have a decent season. But if that's not the case and he's not getting the protection that Jet fans are going to hope for, then it's going to be another long season. You still got most of the guys on defense. That defense is still together, so you expect them to be good. But it's going to come down to the offense. And you hope for a healthy Breece Hall again. Because you saw what he could do when he's healthy. I mean, towards the end of last year, I mean, he was great down the stretch. I mean, and he had a ton of carries in the Patriots game, in that snow game. I didn't he have like 30 plus carries, or I might be I might be wrong, but yeah, he had a ton of carries in that last game. Like, he went off. Nope, that is not the game I was looking for. 15-10 Patriots. That is not right. Let's see. Yeah, 17-3. Oh yeah, so Breece Hall ran for 178 yards, and I just wanted to go back and see. Oh yeah, he had 37 carries. Yeah, and a touchdown. I know obviously he's not going to do that every single game, but again, I mean, if the Jets if this offensive line is going to be good next year, I mean, that's only going to make Breece Hall better. So, it'll be good to have, a running game to rely upon. It's not going to just, fall on the hands of Rodgers. Having Breece Hall back there, that's definitely going to help. So, I mean, look what happened on the first play of the game against the Bills. I mean, Rodgers handed it off to Breece Hall, and he took it, 20 yards or whatever it was. I want to see how, with a healthy squad here, I want to see what this team can do. And I don't want to see any injuries. But again, you got to cross your fingers. So, but again, I mean, I like what the Jets have done. I really do. I know for some Jet fans, like my friends and coworkers, they're not optimistic because something will happen. And I don't blame him for that. Because, I mean, again, I just talked about Rodgers handing it off to Breece Hall to start the season. You thought, wow, this is going to be great. They have a quarterback that's going to change this offense, even though it was just him handing it off. But it just felt different. And then all of a sudden, 3 plays later, he ends up getting hurt. So this is going to be take 2. And I hope this take is, the right take. And the Jets end up having a good season. Rodgers has a good year. And whatever happens, happens. If they end up losing to like the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game or something like that, I mean, at least if Rodgers ends up calling it a career after 2024, at least it'd be, going down swinging against the best. But again, that's, just a hypothetical. But, if the Jets are healthy, I mean, there's no reason why this team can't make the playoffs. I think the Bills, with, some of the subtractions that they've made and, letting go of some guys on defense, the reshuffling of the defense there, they're going to be a different team next year. But, I mean, you still look at them as probably the favorites. I mean, Miami lost a lot of guys on defense, but, by releasing them, but they've added. And the Patriots are rebuilding, but it's just there are so many teams. I mean, the AFC North is a gauntlet in itself. So it's just that you got a lot of teams that you're going to be competing with, for playoff spots. If the division's not the answer, then you got to look at the wild card, and there's going to be a lot of teams fighting for that wild card spot, those wild card spots. So, it's going to be a lot of fun though, because you're going to have a lot of teams competing for those spots. And you saw that in 2023. So that's going to continue next year. So, but I think a healthy Jets squad, I think this team could definitely make some noise. But, I mean, how many times are you going to say it? We thought it was going to be last year. Well, again, I was hoping that Rodgers was going to go out and have a great year. But my one concern was the offensive line. And that reared its ugly head in the first game of the season. First drive of the season. So, but for the Jets, they addressed it, and, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I think Joe Douglas did a great job. But now let's see what he could do in the draft. Knock it out of the park with this draft. But, again, you could do many different things with your first pick. Again, you could go, defense is probably the least likely thing, but you could go lineman. You could go wide receiver. You basically could draft best player available. I'm interested to see what they do at quarterback too. that might be another. They might pick a quarterback later in the draft, possibly. Again, it's all speculation, but I don't know. That's what I think. Because yeah, I mean, you got Tyrod Taylor and you got Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you also got to have a backup plan too. I mean, again, they're not going to draft their franchise quarterback in this draft. I mean, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what they end up doing. But I could definitely see them draft. I mean, they're still going to draft a lineman, not with their first pick, but maybe later in the draft. And then I think I definitely see them taking a quarterback. Well, first they got to move off of Zach Wilson. We got to see what ends up happening with him. So, all right. So with that being said, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, we'll talk about the power rankings that were released this week. I'll go through them, and that is what we will do when we come back from our first break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to go through the power rankings that were released this week on NFL.com. I'll give you my thoughts on them and, what I possibly disagree with, what I agree with. So let's dive right into it. So, number 32, they have the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers, they addressed the offensive line. They traded for Deontay Johnson. So they have made some moves, but they also have made, I think trading Brian Burns was a little... I was a little curious with that. Going to the Giants, so I was happy about it. But again, you look at what they could have gotten for him originally when the Rams offered the Panthers 2 first-round picks, and the Giants come in, and what'd they offer them? It was like a 3rd and a 5th-round pick. I mean, the Giants ended up... that was a steal for the Giants. So, yeah, the Panthers kind of got fleeced in that trade. But, this is going to be a big year for Bryce Young, and you got a new head coach in Dave Canales, who was obviously with Tampa. So, we'll see what happens. But yeah, they're at 32. So, and again, we still got the draft. So obviously, I'll go through these again once the draft happens. So then you got the Commanders at 31. They're going to be looking to draft a quarterback in this draft. Whether it's going to be, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, because the Bears, everybody pretty much is on the same page that they're going to go ahead and draft Caleb Williams with the number 1 overall pick. But they've signed. They signed Zach Ertz, they signed Bobby Wagner. They've made some other moves as well. But I think they're still kind of in the bottom part of the power rankings here. Again, we'll see what they do in the draft. But yeah, they're at 31. So the Patriots are at 30. They brought back Jacoby Brissett. No more Bill Belichick. Gerard Mayo is taking over as the head coach. So again, they're going to be taking a quarterback. They traded Mac Jones. They brought back Kendrick Bourne. Obviously you still got Ramondre Stevenson running the football. So, I mean, we'll see what the Patriots end up doing. They brought back Hunter Henry as well. So they recently signed KJ Osborne. I know I brought that up as well. But yeah, I mean, they're still towards the bottom. They got a lot of work to do. I feel like the Titans are a little low. I feel like they could have been put a little bit higher. At 29, they went down 3 spots. I mean, listen, you lose Derrick Henry, which is big. It's not going to be an easy replacement. I mean, he was getting older, of course, but now he's with the Ravens, which, I think that's a great spot for him. But, I mean, you bring in Tony Pollard, and let's see if Tony Pollard can bounce back. You bring in Calvin Ridley to go along with DeAndre Hopkins, your tight end Okonkwo, and Treylon Burks. This is going to be a big year for Will Levis. I feel like I'd put the Titans a little bit higher. I don't know if I'd put them at 29. But again, the division's going to be very competitive. I said this. I still look at them as the last place team, but who knows? The Broncos are at 28. I don't know. I mean, well, right now they don't have a quarterback. Right now, Jarrett Stidham is their quarterback. They're probably going to end up drafting one. We'll have to wait and see, but I'd probably put the Broncos lower at the moment just because, again, they don't have a quarterback. They traded away Jerry Jeudy, so I probably put. They're at 28, so I don't know how much lower I'd put them, but I'd probably rank the Titans ahead of them. That's just me though. Giants at 27. Again, this is a big draft for them. They're probably going to draft a quarterback with their first pick. Unless they're going to take a receiver, which I'd be fine with because that receiving core really needs some work. They've addressed the offensive line in the offseason, but it still needs some work, of course. But yeah, the offense isn't looking great, but the defense I think can be a solid unit in 2024. Especially with the Brian Burns trade, which I didn't expect it. And you add him to a defensive line with Dexter Lawrence, with Kayvon Thibodeau. You got to be excited about that at least if you're a Giant fan. The offense, yeah, it's going to be a little frustrating. But we'll see what they do in the draft. The Cardinals are at 26. We'll see what they end up doing. They signed Jonah Williams to the offensive line. I guess they're going to be looking to take a receiver. So I think Marvin Harrison Jr. might be playing with Kyler Murray next year. So we'll see. Kyler Murray, obviously, the Cardinals, they've made it clear that he is their quarterback going forward, and he played decent when he came back late in the season. So, and the Cardinals, they definitely showed some fight with Rich Gannon as their or Jonathan Gannon, as their head coach last season. So we'll see what they do now in year 2 with him. The Saints, they went down 10 spots on these power rankings. They're at 25. They signed Chase Young, who actually has a neck injury, and they were aware of it, and I think they said he's going to miss all of training camp. So, and they cut Michael Thomas. Yeah, so, listen, Derek Carr finished the year strong. And, I will see how if that carries over in the next season. But yeah, I'm curious to see what ends up happening there. But yeah, I feel like 25 is too low for the Saints. I think they got to be a little bit higher. The Seahawks went down 5 spots. They're at 24. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I feel like that's another team that I think I would rank a little bit higher. Listen, I like the Sam Howell trade a lot. I think that he can end up being the starter at some point. I think he's really going to compete with Geno Smith for that starting job. And again, the Seahawks have a lot of weapons. And you bring in Mike McDonald, who's a defensive guy. So that's, you got a lot of weapons on offense. A defensive guy. Listen, I think the offense is still going to be good because you have, a lot of playmakers. It's going to come down to the quarterback play. And maybe Sam Howell ends up being that guy. Maybe I'm a little too high on Sam Howell, but I don't know. I liked the trade. I think he definitely has a chance to eventually start for them. You got the Vikings at 23. They went down a spot. I like what they did on defense a lot this offseason. The defense took a step forward, with Brian Flores as the defensive coordinator. It's just right now they don't have a quarterback. I mean, you have Sam Darnold, but I don't know if he's not the long-term answer. And who knows what's going to happen with Justin Jefferson if he's going to want out of there. But again, this is one of the best supporting casts that Sam Darnold has ever had, and they signed Aaron Jones too to help out with the running game because that was an issue last season. So we'll see what happens. But I like what the Vikings did outside of losing Kirk Cousins. So, but they did trade up, so they're going to be looking to draft a quarterback. Then you got the Raiders at 22. Christian Wilkins was a big signing. They did lose Josh Jacobs. They signed Gardner Minshew to compete with Aiden O'Connell. We'll see what they do in the draft. They'll probably end up. I think they're going to end up drafting a quarterback. But they also did recently sign Alexander Madison in the backfield to go along with Zamir White. But yeah, you still got Devontae Adams. You got Jacoby Myers. Trey Tucker made some plays for them in his rookie season. So, full year of Antonio Pierce. Let's see what they can do. You got the Colts at 21. Full year of Anthony Richardson. They did sign Joe Flacco as an insurance policy. But yeah, I think this team is heading in the right direction. They're at 21. The Jets are at 20. They went up 4 spots. I mean, yeah, listen, I talked about them in the last segment. They addressed the offensive line. You signed Mike Williams. Listen, if the team's healthy, they're going to be competing for a playoff spot. Bears at 19. Right now they don't have a quarterback, but I love what the Bears did in the offseason. Signing DeAndre Swift, trading for Keenan Allen. Team's going to be good. I think this team is going to be good. Now, the division is going to be tough because you got the Packers and the Lions. But you know what? If Caleb Williams ends up being the guy, I mean, listen, he's got a lot of weapons. DJ Moore, like I said, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift, Cole Kmet. I mean, there's no reason why the Bears, shouldn't be a decent team going into next year. Buccaneers at 18, Rams at 17. The Bucs, they brought back most of their free agents. And let's see now what they could do with Baker Mayfield and all those guys in year 2. It's going to be tougher now because you got the Falcons with Kirk Cousins, but I'm hoping for a good year for Baker next season. So then the Rams are at 17. I mean, the loss of Aaron Donald really hurts them. That is a big hole they're going to have to fill. And I think they'll figure it out just because, again, you got Sean McVay, one of the best head coaches in the NFL. But that's a big loss. But you know what? The offense with the healthy Matthew Stafford and all those guys, you don't have to worry about the offensive side of the ball if everybody's healthy. It's the defense was the weakness of the team last season, so they're gonna have to figure that out. Chargers actually are at 16 right now. The moves that were made, so they lost everybody. I mean, they let go of Mike Williams. They traded Keenan Allen. Austin Eckler walked in free agency. I forgot to mention, he signed with the Commanders. So, Gus Edwards, Will Dissly, and Hayden Hurst. You got them. You got Quentin Johnston and Joshua Palmer. Those are Justin Herbert's weapons at the moment, which you figure they're going to draft a receiver. But, they're at 16. I mean, I think they're still middle of the pack. I think right now I'd probably put the Rams ahead of them. But I think the Chargers are gonna figure it out with Harbaugh now. The Jaguars, middle of the pack, they're at 15. They had that late season collapse. They signed Eric Armstead, which is a good move. They signed Gabe Davis, Mitch Morse, Ezra Cleveland, and also they brought in Darnell Savage as well. The offensive line was not very good last season, so that was big. Getting Mitch Morse from the Bills, who the Bills released. So, Then you got the Falcons jumping up 13 spots here. And again, that has a lot to do with Kirk Cousins. They traded for Rondale Moore. They signed Darnell Mooney. So Kirk Cousins has a lot of weapons to throw to go along with Drake London and obviously Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts. So they're at 14. The Steelers at 13, whole different quarterback room with Russell Wilson, with Justin Fields. So we'll see what happens. They also signed Patrick Queen, which was a solid signing. So yeah, I mean the Steelers, they're playing in a tough division, but you better believe that they'll be competing for a playoff spot, next season, because that's just what happens under Mike Tomlin. Then you got the Browns at 12. They traded for Jerry Jeudy. You're hoping for a bounce back from Deshaun Watson. You hope that he's healthy. You hope Nick Chubb is healthy, because if they are, and Deshaun Watson can, be the quarterback he was with the Texans, which again I don't see that happening. Browns are going to be a good team. Got a good defense, so we'll see what they do in 2024. Then you got the Dolphins at 11. Again, they made a lot of moves, letting go of guys. But I know they signed Jordan Poyer. They signed Shaq Barrett as well. Listen, the offense is going to put up points. You're hoping Tua can make a jump next season, which I don't know if he can. But again, they're going to be another team that's going to be in the thick of it next year. Then in the top 10, so you got the Cowboys, who went down 4 spots. They really haven't done much. I mean, they signed Eric Kendricks and their long snapper. That's really it. So it's really going to all come down to the draft for them. So they're at 10. The Bengals at 9. You're just hoping for a healthy Joe Burrow. We got to keep an eye on the T. Higgins stuff because if they end up trading him, that's going to be a big loss. And like I said, maybe you try to bring back Tyler Boyd unless he gets signed somewhere. Then the top 8, Green Bay Packers. Love what they did. They get Xavier McKinney. They signed Josh Jacobs. Now I thought. A lot of people thought for the moment, hey, they're going to keep Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones. Well, that ended up not being the case. They released Aaron Jones. But with Josh Jacobs, they did re-sign A.J. Dillon. Josh Jacobs should have a solid year for them. Jordan Love, I think, is going to take another step forward with the youngest team in the NFL around him. You got the receiving core. With Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed and Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs and the 2 young tight ends. I mean, Packers are going to be good. Packers are going to be good next season. Number 7, another team, loved what they did in the offseason, the Houston Texans. Again, adding pieces to the defense. They signed Danielle Hunter. They brought back Noah Brown and Dalton Schultz. They traded for Joe Mixon. So the running game, will be better. I mean, I think it's probably going to be the same production like with Singletary, because Singletary wasn't bad for them. But listen, C.J. Stroud in year 2, I'm really looking forward to see what he can do. Then the top 6. So you got the Eagles. They made a lot of moves on defense. They signed Saquon Barkley. New coordinators, Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. I expect this team to bounce back. So yeah, so they're at 6. I think I'd put the Bills a little bit lower. They did bring in Curtis Samuel to replace Gabe Davis. So, he's a decent wide receiver. I think he could be good for them. You still got Josh Allen. You still got Stephon Diggs, who we will talk about in the next segment. So they're at 5, but I'd probably put them a little bit lower. Then in the top 4, so you got the Lions. They signed DJ Reader. They did lose a couple of guys. They lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They lost Jonah Jackson. But they did bring in DJ Reader. I mean, the Lions really didn't have to do that much. I know the defense was a little bit of an issue last season, so you got to improve that. And I think they'll probably try to add another weapon on the offensive side of the ball. But you got a great duo at running back. Jared Goff is played really well for them. Solid offensive line. You got Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Sam Laporta had a solid rookie season. So, the Lions are going to be a good team once again, and they also extended their head coach too. They're going to be a good team once again in 2024. And then the top 3, got the Ravens. Adding Derrick Henry was huge. They paid Justin Metabuke. If they're healthy next year, they're going to be a good team. Disappointing end to their season, losing to the Kansas City Chiefs in the championship game. They're going to be one of the top teams if they're healthy next season. Then at number 2, you got the 49ers, of course. Did lose some guys this offseason. Armstead they released. They did sign Leonard Floyd. They also did sign Josh Dobbs recently to be their backup quarterback. But, there wasn't really a lot of moves that they had to make this offseason. I'd still look at them as the best team in the NFC. So, And then at 1, of course, you have the Kansas City Chiefs. They signed Marquise Brown. They paid Chris Jones. Listen, this team is going to be is the team to beat once again going into next year. So, that's it for the power rankings. So let me know what you guys think. I know I kind of ran a little bit long there with them, but let me know what you guys think about them. And with that being said now, before we go into our next break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we will talk about a few wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy's new deal, Stephon Diggs' cryptic post on social media, and Odell Beckham Jr. Most likely leaving the Ravens with the little post that he made recently, basically saying goodbye to Baltimore. So that is what we'll talk about when we come back from our second break of the show. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are going to talk about a few wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy, Stephon Diggs, and Odell Beckham Jr. So we'll start off with Jeudy. So Jeudy actually got a contract extension from the Cleveland Browns. He signed a 3-year extension worth up to $58 million. Includes $41 million guaranteed. And again, he hasn't played a down yet for the Browns, but they paid him a lot of money. He was the 15th pick in the 2020 draft. They obviously acquired him from the Broncos, and the Browns needed another weapon. Now they bring in Jeudy, who, he was expected to do big things, and it just really, consistency. It was lacking consistency there, and also injuries as well. And again, he's coming in. He's going to be the number 2 guy to Amari Cooper. They also traded for Elijah Moore last season. You got David Njoku there. So, listen, I think he could be okay for the Browns. I'm not expecting him to be, a difference maker at the moment. But, and the other thing, too, is, again, the quarterback play with Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson, again, has not been great since he got traded to the Browns. And, of course, last season dealt with injuries and ultimately ended up having, a season-ending shoulder injury. It just really has not panned out for the Browns. And, I think Jeudy is okay. Again, hasn't been great since he got drafted. But, again, part of that was the quarterback play that he dealt with. You get Russell Wilson and you figure, okay, well, this is where he's really going to show his potential, and that just ended up never happening. But, again, that's not all on Russ, but, it's just that's just what happened in Denver. So, he's never had over 1,000 yards. He had 856 receiving yards in 2020, 3 touchdowns, 467 in 2021. 972 in 2022 and 6 touchdowns. So, I mean, Russ's first year, he was decent. And then only had 2 touchdowns last year, and he had 758 receiving yards. So, now you pair him with Deshaun Watson. Again, you got Amari Cooper on one side. You have Elijah Moore there as well, David Njoku. So, I mean, he's in a good situation. You got a lot of he's got a lot of playmakers around him. And of course, if Nick Chubb can bounce back, from his knee injury, and could be the Nick Chubb of old, hopefully, that just adds another dimension to their offense. But yeah, I mean, again, I think it's really going to come down to Deshaun Watson's play at quarterback. If he's not right and he's still turning the ball over and he's just not the quarterback that he was with Houston, it's going to be more of the same. And the Browns did have a signature win against the Ravens, and that was the last game he played. So I mean, we'll see. But Judy gets a new deal. Yeah, they're expressing confidence. The Browns are expressing confidence in him by paying him. So, now he's got to go out there and produce. And again, we'll see, how Watson bounces back from his shoulder injury that ended his season. But only time will tell. So that's one wide receiver. Then we're going to talk about, of course, Stephon Diggs. Now, again, this is not something to make a big deal about, but he did tweet, right? He did tweet or he posted whatever. It was Instagram, Twitter, whatever. And he said he posted ready for whatever. That's what he said, which sparked some speculation about his future. He's under contract with the Bills until 2027. He's set to make $18.5 million in 2024. And listen, if he ends up getting traded, that would really hurt the Bills. Now, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. But again, it's just another one of those things with Diggs. This has been speculated for years now, for the past couple of seasons at least. But ESPN's Dan Graziano, he reported that Diggs has a history of such posts, but has always reconciled with the team, which is true. But yeah, I mean, who knows? Diggs has consistently performed well, recording over 1,000 receiving yards in each of the last 6 seasons. In 2023, he had 1,183 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns, earning a Pro Bowl selection. Yeah, not bad for somebody that people are calling washed. Now, again, that ball that Josh Allen threw up into the stratosphere that he dropped, yeah, he should have caught that. And, Diggs, towards the end of the season, it looked like something was wrong. I don't know if you could just pin it on Diggs, though. I mean, I think you also got to put the blame on Josh Allen, too, for not getting him the ball more. Because I think Diggs could still produce. Again, it's the same argument with Travis Kelce and people saying he's washed. I don't think these guys are washed. I think there's a little more to it. Again, that's just me, though. But, yeah, I mean, the Bills are definitely... I'm curious to see how they are next year because, again, they had to get rid of some guys, on defense and... on the offensive line, like I, just mentioned in the last segment, the Jaguars signing Mitch Morse, who the Bills had to let go. It's just 2023 was the year to do it. 2023 was the year to do it. And I mean, you could make the argument, hey, the last couple of seasons the Bills had their chance. 2022 they got off to that great start, and then they kind of just fell flat against the Bengals and Joe Burrow in the playoffs. Burrow really outplayed Josh Allen. They lost 27-10 in Buffalo. It was a blizzard, but didn't bother the Bengals. And then 2023, you went from possibly not making the playoffs altogether to being the 2 seed. And you had the Chiefs come into your stadium this time, not in Arrowhead, which the Bills did win earlier in the season in Arrowhead, but they do good again. They beat the Chiefs in the regular season. They just don't beat them in the postseason. And tough loss, 3-point game. You ended up losing. And you go back to, and then you go back to the first time they played them in the AFC Championship game, back in 2020. And, that famous, photo of Diggs watching them, get the trophy as AFC champions. You thought, okay, the Bills are going to be back. And they played in the following season, and he lost in overtime in one of the greatest playoff games of all time. And it's just, again, you lose to the Bengals in the divisional round. Now you lose to the Chiefs, who were not the same Chiefs team offensively. It was a different Chiefs team coming in. A weaker Chiefs team. And you couldn't beat them. In your own stadium. And, more Diggs stuff. Ready for whatever. That's just what these wide receivers do. You got Brandon Ayuk, tweeting Mike Tomlin saying, "Oh, someone said we look like twins. What do you think?" It's just that's what happens. It's in sports that there's a lot of times where you look at certain situations, you're like, is this a soap opera? Really, that's just what it is. So, again, I just wanted to touch upon it because it goes along with the wide receiver topic here. But yeah, Diggs is not going anywhere for the moment. And again, like Dan Graziano said, and he's correct, Diggs has done this in the past, and it gets resolved. So, and he's right, because there's been that speculation of Diggs leaving Buffalo for years now, and it hasn't happened. So. And again, if he ended up getting traded, that would really hurt the Bills. Because look at the growth that Josh Allen has had over the years, and part of that was them trading for Stephon Diggs from the Vikings. So now, if the final wide receiver I wanted to talk about here is Odell Beckham Jr. So he announces on Instagram that he won't return to the Baltimore Ravens after one season. He expresses appreciation for the Ravens organization and the city of Baltimore in his farewell message. He signed a one-year deal with the Ravens last offseason and appeared in 14 games, recording 565 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. Again, the talent is still there, but again, it's not the Odell Beckham Jr. from when he first got drafted by the Giants back in the day. He's not that same guy. And the Ravens, they got some young wide receivers. It was better for Beckham to go in a different direction. Two sides to go in different directions. But yeah, Beckham has received little reported interest since free agency opened, indicating he may be getting close to finding. Has received little reported interest since free agency opened, indicating he may be getting closer to finding a new team. I guess maybe. Well, I don't how I put that. I don't know. Again, I have that in my notes, but wouldn't that mean that he's not getting closer if he's not getting a lot of interest? But maybe it's because teams didn't know if he was going back to Baltimore or not. So what's the market out there for Odell? I think another team will sign him. We'll get another cheap deal, but I wouldn't really expect him to make a huge impact. He's looked at as, I guess a number 3 wide receiver now. And again, the beginning of his career, he looked like he was going to be one of the best wide receivers in the NFL for a long time. But you know what? What really hurt him was injuries. Yeah, that's what it comes down to, is injuries. He suffered a season-ending injury back in 2017. I think it was an ankle. He tore his ACL a couple times, with the Browns, and then he tore it again in the Super Bowl with the Rams. And he looked like he was the best player on the field that game in the Super Bowl. He looked like he was going to get Super Bowl MVP the way he was playing. And then he unfortunately got hurt. And that's, that definitely has kind of derailed his career a little bit. Well, I should say a little bit, a lot. And, we'll see where he ends up going. Maybe he goes to the Jets. I mean, maybe the Jets bring him in. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who would be a good fit for him. I mean, I guess, again, if you're a team that needs a... I mean, I think if he doesn't end up getting signed, I think if a team loses a wide receiver, if a receiver gets hurt, maybe that's where he ends up getting signed. That's a possibility, but we'll see. But yeah, I don't really... Like I just read, I don't... He's not really getting a ton of interest, but maybe... that changes. But yeah, I mean, the best days of Odell Beckham Jr. are gone. But yeah, I mean, you saw flashes with him with the Ravens. I mean, talent is still there. It's just, again, it's not what it once was. No, his peak was his first couple of seasons with the Giants, and then it just kind of went downhill. But yeah, so that's pretty much it when talking about the wide receivers here. Let me know what you guys think about Jerry Jeudy's new deal, the Diggs drama. Should we really buy into that? I mean, I'm not really, but again, it's just something to talk about. And also Odell Beckham Jr., where could you potentially see him ending up if there is a market out there for him? So we're going to take our final break of the show. And then when we come back, we are going to talk about the Buccaneers and their offseason strategy. Jason Licht, their general manager, had some comments that I wanted to talk about. And yeah, so that is what we will do when we come back, what we will discuss when we come back from our final break of the show. So with that being said, stick around and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show today, we are going to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and, kind of what their offseason strategy has been. And some of the comments, like I said, of what general manager Jason Licht had to say. So, yeah, the Bucs have been very active this offseason. Obviously, they retained Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield. They franchise tagged Antoine Winfield Jr., they re-signed Levante David. So they kept pretty much all of their guys. They did let go of Shaq Barrett. They did let go of Devin White. Two guys that were a part of that Super Bowl team. But Jason Licht did say, well, first of all, talking about Mike Evans, he did talk about, Mike Evans' selflessness, his leadership qualities, describing him as one of the most, humble superstars he's ever been around. But he also did hint at the fact that, this contract extension is not going to be the last one for Mike Evans. So his plan is to keep Mike Evans for the rest of his career in Tampa. But the other thing he did, the other thing that was addressed too, is he also wants to work on, of course, because they did franchise. Sorry, sneeze. Had to hold it back. Like I said, happens at least once on every show. But he did say that, of course, they want to, sign Antoine Winfield Jr. to a long-term contract. They franchise tagged him. But also Tristan Wirfs as well, their left tackle. He's another candidate for a long-term extension. The Bucs are prioritizing trying to, keep their core guys, for the future. And, so far they've done a good job of that. And again, hopefully, Baker Mayfield signed that contract. Hopefully this is where he is for the rest of his career. Listen, I'm happy for Baker. I mean, I've said it numerous times on the show, but the Bucs, their plan is they want to keep their core guys. And I mean, a lot of the guys I just mentioned were part of that Super Bowl team. Now, again, that was also with Tom Brady at quarterback. You had Rob Gronkowski. That was a different time. That was a very interesting time. It really was. And not even just from a football perspective, but just the world and what was going on at the time. But, I mean, you still got a decent amount of players from that team. Antoine Winfield Jr., Mike Evans. They brought back Jordan Whitehead now, who I think was with them too. Godwin, of course, is still there. Tristan Wirfs, who they drafted because, hey, you got Tom Brady. We got to draft him a left tackle now. So, I mean, and he's one of the best left tackles in the NFL. I mean, what the Bucs are doing is the right thing. And, obviously they got to add to this team, through the draft too. I think there's still things that need to be addressed there. Because, the division is going to be better next year. They were able to get it. They had their midseason struggle, but they can't afford to have that again. Because you got Kirk Cousins now in the division with the Falcons. I know when I went over the power rankings, they had the Saints ranked really low, which, I mean, I don't know if I'd rank them that low. But we'll see. I mean, again, we are a ways away from next season. So, and then you got the Panthers as well. But, I mean, the Falcons are going to be better. So that's going to be another test in this division for the Bucs. And if they're going to be up for the challenge, but it's in year 2 now for Baker and the Bucs. I mean, I'm hoping that he has, puts up similar numbers than he did, or like he did in 2023. And, we'll see what happens. But, I think for the Bucs, I mean, prioritizing keeping your core together, that's, you want that. You want to hear that. And curious to see what else, the Bucs can do. I mean, again, the draft is going to be big for them. Actually, we'll take a look at, what else they've done in the offseason. I know the Giants signed one of their old offensive linemen. I mean, they really all they've done is retain their guys. Actually, wait, no, that's not what I wanted. I wanted the other one. I mean, they did sign Jordan Whitehead, who played with the Jets, but he was with them prior to that. So, I mean, they brought back Baker, Mike Evans. Bryce Hall, they signed a corner to a 1-year deal because they also did trade Carlton Davis to the Lions. Yeah, so they signed Jordan Whitehead. They brought in John Walford as their third quarterback. Ben Bredesen, offensive guard. Justin Skule, another tackle. I think that's how you pronounce it. Sua Opeta, another offensive guard. Re-signed Levante David. Re-signed Chase Edmonds. You re-signed Chase McLaughlin to a 3-year deal. I mean, they basically brought back most of their guys. They really didn't bring that many people outside of the organization. Brought in a couple of Jets, Whitehead and did I say Bryce? Yeah, Bryce Hall. Because there's Bryce Hall and then there's Breece Hall. So Bryce Hall, the corner. I mean, now we'll see what they end up doing in the draft. I mean, I think you'd like to see them add maybe another receiver. Maybe another running back as well. I know that from what I've been hearing, the running back class isn't that, jam-packed, at least for this draft, but we'll see. You did lose some guys on defense, so, I think, they're going to go and draft, maybe they'll draft a linebacker, an edge rusher maybe. Again, that's just my opinion. But, we'll see. But again, like I said, the division is going to be more competitive next season. And if they're going to be up for are they going to be up for the challenge? Again, we'll have to wait and see. Because again, I mean, listen, Kirk Cousins is going to do well for the Falcons if he's healthy. But again, got to see if he's healthy. Coming off of that significant injury. Like I said, I think he will. But again, got to see it. So, but yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for the show for today. I actually do want to mention, I did bring this up, I believe, yesterday, but I will be making an appearance on the Chip Shot Football Podcast later today. I believe the show is at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So I'll be joining Manny, who does a great job. I'll be on for the first 2 segments of his show. So make sure to tune in for that. That'll be the first time that I actually appear on a different show. So that'll be interesting. So yeah, make sure to tune in for that. Also, again, make sure to tune in to the other shows as well. I mean, we're, pumping out content Monday through Friday. Keep yourself updated on the latest news, not just with football, but every other sport as well, pretty much. Yeah, just want to say that as well. Make sure to leave a comment, a like. Let me know what you guys think about the show and the stuff that we talked about. But yeah, I think that it's safe to say the craziness of the offseason has ended. And now it's just really we look towards the draft. That's really what it comes down to. So we'll keep an eye on that. Well, I mean, I'll keep an eye on it. Well, we'll talk about things leading into the draft in case any other stuff happens. Like, you saw the Vikings, they made that trade up. Maybe something else happens, and we'll speculate on who's going to take who. Yeah, but that'll be here before we know it. So, really looking forward to that. And then shortly after that, the schedule comes out. So we'll see if the Giants do indeed play Philadelphia in Brazil, because I feel like that might happen. But we'll see. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the show for today. Again, thank you guys for watching. Like I said, make sure to tune in to the Chip Shot Football Podcast. I think it's 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, I want to say. Like I said, I'll be on for the first half hour with Manny. Looking forward to it. But yeah, that's pretty much it from me. So with that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.